Welcome to Baggage Claim, where we like to create conversations and communities around relationships and blended families. Yes, we do. So if it's been one of those kind of days for you, maybe get a really good drink. If it's just a normal day, grab your favorite coffee, your favorite tea, pull up to the table and join us as we jump into conversations and unpack our bags about the blended family. So let's jump in and get started. Jess has the giggles tonight. So
My giggle box got turned over because of the...
That's really loud. So this is going to be fun.
It's not supposed to be in.
It's going to be a
That's
fun.
why I'm laughing.
It's going to be a fun night. So anyway, jumping into baggage claim, I want to talk about the layout of what we're going to be about, how it's going to kind of work. So there's three major areas that we want to talk about throughout our podcast. All our conversations will fall into one of these three. It'll be about you, yourself, personally, lots of things, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, checking up how you doing, all those things. And then it'll be the couple, you and ever who that other significant other is.
Each other.
Good way to put it. Each other. And then the family. So versus if you got one kid or you got a bunch of kids or you got whatever it may be, that's the family part of that. So tonight we're going to focus on the first one about self. So it could be kind of fun, interesting for us to dig into where we were, how we progressed, how we got to where we were, how we moved past that, which led us into this incredible relationship with each other. So Jess?
Incredible.
Absolutely.
So we all bring baggage. That's where we come up with our name of Baggage Claim. And today we're going to talk about how when Greg and I got together, we both brought baggage with us that we were holding on to. And although it looked different, we were both carrying the same thing.
I'm caressing my microphone over here. It's kind of neat.
We're learning as we go, and I've got the giggles because I'm so nervous.
I'm enjoying my microphone.
Stop.
Go ahead.
But we both were carrying baggage, and although it looked different, it was really based out of the same thing. We both were carrying content inside of our baggage that we brought to our relationship that was trust. We both had some pieces of our life before one another.
So, like, really quick though, because of that, like,
Can't see you.
How long were you and TJ married?
We were married 11 years.
Okay, cool. All right, gotcha.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Caress that thing. There you go. Get it right where you want.
Shut up.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I mean that in the best way possible, not in any kind of.
So
right.
we were married for 11 years.
Gotcha.
And like we talked about in the first episode, when we had been married for 11 years, like I just said, third time in a row.
Yep, got it.
I can't see you. This
There
is.
you go.
So I lost my first husband in a tragic accident. So, my trust was broken not by my spouse. My trust was broken by an event that happened.
Gotcha.
So, my trust in God's plan, or what I thought it was for me,
Yep.
Was, in my eyes at that moment, was broken. And then just my trust that everything's okay was broken. So
can I ask a question though too? Because how did you? Because when you go through a traumatic situation, I've never experienced that, but I can imagine it's horrific to be 1 minute your life is what you planned it to be a normal, and 30 minutes later it's completely not that. So when we go through trauma, sometimes that trauma changes who we are as a person. So how did you realize the baggage that you were toting was trust, those things? How did you get to that point?
Well, I mean, like you said, it was literally 30 minutes from the time. I mean, we were planning on going to a Georgia game that day with friends, and he told me bye and left to go on the bike ride. And in the midst of from when he left to the phone call I got was about 25 minutes.
Wow.
And that's when everything went sideways. So,
Gotcha. So, like, not to just jump right in, but like, how soon after did you jump into counseling? Or what did that look like? Or how
um,
did you?
so pieces of that in the beginning, I don't remember. I think that really is the Lord's way of protecting pieces of my brain and pieces of my heart. But I do know it was really quickly within the first couple of weeks that I went to counseling, and I went once a week, every week for 2 years.
So tell me too a little bit when you say that's God's way of protecting you. So your faith was a pretty big part of your and TJ's marriage. Unpack that a little bit for me, if you don't mind.
Well, I grew up in church and I became a Christian when I was 12. And it's never really been a question whether or not I believed in what, this in salvation and what God provided for us
Gotcha.
through Jesus.
Okay.
So it's really never been a question. TJ became a Christian later in life and then was called to be a pastor. So for quite some time in our marriage, he was a full-time minister, youth pastor. Um, right before his death, he had started another company, but we were still heavily involved in church, although that was not his full-time profession at that point. So church was just a part of my life from birth to now.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it's
I asked that because I'm curious if that played into the counseling when you went to go see a counselor. What was it someone faith based? Was it not? Was
oh
it
yeah,
okay?
it was somebody through my church
Okay.
at the moment, and I never met the man. Obviously, the counselor. His name is
Mm.
Vic. I won't say his whole name unless someone asks me for it, and I'll be glad to share his information. But I did not enjoy that counseling at all
Wow.
because he kept referring back to Job. And I don't
Mm.
know if I've ever shared this with you, but almost every session he talked about Job and how he suffered for the Lord and how, you know, other people left Job's life and why do you not just give up? And so he attacked it from different angles of how Job kept his faith. But then there was so many other people in his life that didn't understand why he kept his faith. And
Mm.
he was trying to help me see that through my own story, there's going to be people that will say, well, why would God allow that? That's just awful. Why would he allow that to you and Thomas and Aaron Grace?
Right.
Meanwhile, I had to be the Job to figure out, am I really rooted in the faith I say I'm rooted in?
Mm.
And so,
Well, how
yes, I am.
I would say that's a big thing. Like
Yeah.
that didn't shake your faith. You weren't like
Oh, it
pissed at
shook my,
God or anything.
yeah, for
Okay.
probably the first year and a half of it, I was really angry.
Gotcha.
But my counselor kept telling me, it's okay if you tell God you're mad at him.
Mm.
Like he knows what's just happened to you. You can tell him how you feel, although he already knows. But for you to voice that to him is part of your healing.
Mm. Okay.
And it really was.
So unpacking all that, going to counseling for probably a long time,
Mhm,
I would imagine.
mhm.
When did you start to feel like this trauma goes from you being a victim to you being unpacking that, allowing it to change who you are, of course,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it becomes a scar, not your identity.
Yes,
Where'd that happen at?
I was determined for it to not be my identity. I was only 32
Why were you determined? Like what? I'm curious.
because I didn't want that to be what Thomas and Aaron Grace thought of me.
Hmm.
I wanted
Okay.
them to be able to look at me and say, my mama's strong
Hmm.
and my mama's faith
Your mom is strong. Yeah,
so
go
strong.
girl.
But I wanted them to be able to look at me even now at 23 and 20 to be able to say, my mom is so strong.
Right.
And not just because of who I am, but because who God made me.
Gotcha.
Um, so that was 90% of it.
Okay.
But the other part of it was I know I'm made for more.
Mm,
But I just didn't know what that looked like yet.
gotcha. Okay. Wow. All right. Keep going. I mean,
So, I mean, but as I'm coming through that, mind you, those whole 2 years, it was me and my kids. Well, the first 6 months or so, it was me and my army of friends and family that
Mhm.
helped me put one foot in front of the other because I couldn't remember how to do that at that point.
what does that mean?
It's
Like for
literally,
some people listening, going, well, what do you mean?
yeah. Well, I mean, basics like my friend Julie for the first 4 months would come over after dinner and bedtime with her own family. She would come after dinner and help me do the bedtime routine with my children
Mm,
because it didn't make sense to me. It was kind of numb. So Julie would come over and do that with my own kids
oh wow.
for months.
Okay.
My grandmother, Nanny, would spend the night with me for weeks on end
Mm,
to help me go through the routines after, of course, I had been living with Chad and Lisa that I mentioned in the first episode to help me just life.
right.
And when Nanny wasn't spending the night with me every night, it was my dad spending
Mm,
the night with me every night.
yeah.
Just to help me. That routine didn't make any sense anymore.
Like, what did you just didn't want to do it?
I didn't
You
want to do
didn't?
it.
Okay.
I couldn't. It's so weird because I couldn't. It's almost like I couldn't remember how to do it. Like there was another friend that would come over and just do laundry for me
Oh wow.
because it didn't even dawn on me that hey,
You
we
think
all need clean
you
clothing.
think we could still call her? Get her to come
Maybe
over?
because we have quite a pile of clothes. I wash them. I just don't fold them.
Sorry, I'm not trying to kill a serious moment.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, my army of friends and family helped me.
Because this is a really, I mean, I am trying to make light of it, so it's not, but that's a really, really heavy thing to walk through.
Yeah.
Like that's one of those things you hope in a relationship you don't. After 11 years of being with the person you love, that's gone.
But then there's parts of me that while I'm talking about it right now, while you just said that, like I was just talking a lot about me, but I had a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old too
Hmm.
that I had to figure out how to love on and care for and continue life for as well.
Right.
Our crew is very distracting right now with all the love in my heart. But that's also when, family members came in. But those same family members were dealing with the same trauma I was. So
Right.
we just all were just trying to do the best we
Just trying
could.
to figure it out as you
Yes.
go. Okay.
But if we not fast forward, not to
Take a step. Take a big step.
as you take a step forward
Right.
in my counseling, Vic would say, and this is probably a year and a half in, almost 2 years in, he was at just normal person conversation asking if I'd talked to any men. And I was just like, absolutely not. I'm not ready for that. And he was like, okay, that's healthy. Give yourself time or whatever. But he was like, mind you, you're 32 now. And so you're still really young. And I was like, how am I going to know I'm ready? And he said, well, in my experience, you're going to know you're ready when you have everything in order.
Hmm.
You're functioning in a healthy way on your own with the kids. The kids are in a good spot and y'all are just rocking. He said, that's when you're going to know you're ready because you don't want somebody to come along and mess it up.
Hmm. Well, sorry about that.
Yeah. Then.
So when did you have that kind of epiphany or that moment where you're like, oh crap, I got this. Like I got this.
When I was getting my nails done and my friend Kim came in and she said, I've been praying for you about something really specific. I was like, okay. And this friend that had been doing that all along, our little girls were friends. It's like, what are you praying about? And she said, well, this is him. And showed me a picture of you.
Uh-oh.
Ooh. And I was like, who's he?
Which is interesting because I've known Kim for years and years too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'd never met you. I didn't know you.
No.
Okay. I hope it's a good picture.
Yeah, it was good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And
Okay.
then the second
So
picture.
when you saw my picture, you're like, oh, I'm ready to date?
No.
Oh.
I was like, it was the first time I was like, he's cute.
Mm-hmm.
And so then she showed me a picture of you and your children.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, they're the cutest things I've ever seen. Little blondies.
Yeah, they're very blonde.
Yeah. And so then, I guess it was probably all on that same day. She asked me, would I be willing to meet you just for coffee? Because you had just been through your own situation.
I had. Yeah. I definitely had went through my situation.
Yeah.
So, okay. So my bags I brought to our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
My bag was, and this is my bag.
I forgot to show
You
you.
didn't even show your bag. This is my bag.
Here's my bag.
Your bag is way bigger than my bag. I'm just saying.
They both have trust in them, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It just looks different.
Yep. Yeah, this is very true. And it took us, I remember it took us a while to figure out that trust thing. Like we knew there were some issues. We knew there was a lot of undercurrent things there, but we knew there was more to it. And for me,
So maybe give some background of how you got to where you met me.
okay. All right. So I will
We'll come back to our baggage here in a
unpack
minute.
my bag on the floor.
Yeah.
So I had been married for 13 years, 14.
14,
I think it was 14 years. Yes, got married in 96. So I was married for 14 years. When the infidelity had happened, it's one of those, like when you've been married for 14 years, it's not someone's been done wrong. I'm done with you. Get your stuff, leave. It's a long, long process of, one, for me, it was a long process of trying to figure it out.
Can it be repaired, first of all?
Yeah. And my hope is that we can figure this out and make this work. And so that process was like 8 months, 9 months of just a lot of that unpacking things back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So in unpacking those things, it's a lot. I'll say this. It's really, really difficult because my divorce was the worst thing that happened to me and is also the best thing that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell that to people, they look at me like I'm kind of weird. Like, what does that mean? But I learned so much about myself, about my faith, about relationships. I learned so much about so many different things that it really allowed me to grow. And it's a really crappy place to grow and grow from.
Hurtful grow.
Yeah, well, it's like, and that was the problem. At first, you're just angry and you're just really, really ticked at a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was really mad at God because I didn't grow up in church, so I wasn't a church follower. I'd been to church a couple of times, but I grew up in a really dysfunctional home. My mom was incredibly loving, incredibly sweet. My grandfather kind of like just, and my uncles just helped me kind of on that side of the family, helped raise me.
But the dysfunction came from your father.
Yes, from my father, because he was an alcoholic and he was very abusive. Wasn't a very good guy. So we didn't go to church much, but when we did, it was very weird. I mean, we'd always go to the bootlegger sometimes on Sunday. If you guys don't know what that is, it's where you buy alcohol on Sundays before you could buy alcohol on Sundays from a guy who sold out the back of his house. I always remember because I got popcorn. Yeah, I got popcorn which is a weird thing. But, I was like, hey, we're going to get beer and I get popcorn. So, but anyway, so I didn't have a relationship with church or with God or with Christ, any of that. And then my life was just a train wreck would be a good way to say. I had a couple encounters with law enforcement, and we didn't see eye to eye on some things. So, needless to say, by the time I graduated high school, I'd already had a history or a past.
Yeah.
And so I became a Christian when I was 21, after a really, really, really just kind of messed up night and I get into that one day, but I don't want to now and then I called my buddy, he invited me to church and he's like, hey, come to church. And I was like, I got nothing else.
I've tried everything else.
Jacked it all else up, so I'll go give this a shot.
Yeah.
And I remember walking in and just kind of, I heard the first time someone actually told me the story of Jesus, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! I've never heard that." I remember going down front. And I was like, "Hey, if this is real, and what you're telling me is real, and this is what it's supposed to be, then, bro, you got everything I got. Like, this is all I got. It ain't much, but you got all of it." Um, and I remember it was 2 months later. I actually went on a mission trip. I was like, I'm going on this mission trip, but I had to get permission from my probation officer so I could go out of the country on a mission trip. You want to talk about humbling
Yeah.
to go, you tell the church leadership, I really want to go on this mission trip, but I got to sit for my probation officer. Let me. But anyway, it did. Things took off. Met my ex-wife there. We'd been to church. So then it's just our whole family. Callie and Cody's life had been at church growing up. When the affair happened, I left and was running a couple of companies with a best friend of mine, awesome dude. I love him to death. But Shane and I had been around the world several times doing all kind of really fun, cool stuff. We started these companies together. We're in the middle of all of that. My wife was still at church. She had been in this affair and found out.
On staff still at that point?
Yes. And yes. And so it had been going on for a little while. And so it was a lot of, when I found that out, it was like to say a truckload of weight was put on you would probably be an understatement. Everything I knew in my life was kind of wrecked and different, but it was different from what you had.
But probably felt the same way like me. Like we were doing all the right things.
Yeah,
We're
that's why
attending church, we're volunteering, we're tithing, we're doing all the right things.
Yeah, I was leading a small group.
Yeah. But
doing all things the church told me I needed to do.
But then God still allowed something like that to happen.
Yeah, needless to say, you probably handled it a lot better than I did.
Maybe.
I was not a fan. Every morning when I would go to work, I was just, and it's maybe bad or good, it just is what it is. I would cuss at God all the way to work, and I would just get out. A lot of tears, a lot of crying, a lot of mad. And then I would get back and do the same thing. And that went on and on. So that lasted for a while. And then the marriage had ended, but it takes a while to get a divorce. And so you're trying to figure out kids. They were with me for 7 days, with her for 7 days. The 7 days they weren't with me, I was not a good person. I was not in a good place. I would try to surround myself with work, with people. I had no self-confidence. Everything I felt about myself was kind of gone. It was just kind of eroded away from me. Like I didn't think I had no self-worth. So it was just a really, really bad place, which led to me a lot of times when my kids weren't there, I wouldn't even go into our house because I had gotten some emails and read about some stuff I didn't need
It's
to
another
read.
story for another time.
Yes. And so sometimes I would just get a bunch of beer and I'd sit on my front porch and I would just drink until I fell asleep. And I did that in my garage a couple of times. And then I started going to counseling.
I was about to ask you, when was the change?
I would go to the chapel at Eagle Ranch every day, and I would sit on the second pew on the right-hand side. If you go down, it's the second pew facing it. And I would sit on the inside and I would just sit there and I was mad at God, but I was like, I'm mad at you, but I'm going to have this conversation. And I would just sit there and I would do that all the time. And
and then we got married there.
Yeah, we did. And Eagle Ranch was so good to me because we had done some work there. It's an incredible place, incredible ministry that they do. And they offered to help me with counseling. And so they said, as much as you need, as much as you want, just go, we'll help you. And they did. And I just started the process of unpacking my bags. And it was trust and it was insecurities and all these other things that I had just packed away and was very frustrated. And I remember one day I was just mad and I was just frustrated. And I was like, I was laying in my bathroom floor and I remember just my kids weren't with me this week. And I was just laying on the floor and I was just, not to be too descriptive, but I was just there with a pair of shorts, just laying on the floor because the pot towel was cold. And I was just laying there and I was just kind of sobbing. And I remember getting quiet and it was the weirdest thing. Like I hear this audible voice.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like a, hey, are you done? And I'm just like looking around going, what? And it's like, hey, are you done? And it's like, get up. And I remember it was so clear to me. It's so vivid. I remember getting up and just sitting on my tub, and he said, if you're ready to move forward, I am. And it was that moment that I kind of realized I'd read this in the scriptures and in the
Mhm.
Bible where it says, hey, I will never leave you, I will never forsake you. And I was like, man, I've spent the last 6 months of my life cussing you, mad at you, frustrated at
And
you.
forsaking him.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm not tithing, I'm not giving to the church. I wouldn't even want to listen to worship music. And I remember, I remember that day, and I was like, I did all those things, and he said, hey, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Like, and it changed.
Well,
Like,
that verse stood out to you, but the verse that stood out to me when I was trying to get through everything was that God wants good for those that love him.
Mm.
I know that's the Jessica paraphrase, but I was like, what good is in this
right.
of what you've allowed? And yours was, why have you forsaken me to allow this too?
Yeah.
So there's that bottom line of trust.
Well, I'd not been in church at all since this happened. Didn't want to have anything to do with church. And I remember that Sunday, I was like, hey, 12 Stone, they have a campus down in Lawrenceville. It's a really big church. And so I was like, I'm going to go there on a Sunday because they had a Sunday night service like 6:00. I got off work and I was like, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to sit in that service and just try it. And I remember the place where I was sitting. I remember the row where I was sitting. And I went in and I sat down and I'm sitting there and it felt weird. It felt awkward. I was by myself. But I was like, I'm not going to be a victim and sit and wallow in my mess. I'm not going to wallow in the pity and the mire. I'm going to get up and move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting there and I was like, I don't know what this is going to be like. And I looked up and the guy that was on stage leading worship that night at 6:00 was a really, really good friend of mine named
Mm-hmm.
Jake Gullidge.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake, like, I get emotional when I think, because our eyes met, and man, I got so emotional. I don't even remember what they talked about. I don't
Yeah.
remember anything we sang. I just remember as soon as he was done with worship, he got down and come down and just hug me, and he sat down with me, and then we went to dinner that night,
Mhm.
and that was the beginning steps of me to start healing and
Yeah.
just say, these are the things I'm going to start moving toward what's right and what's good for me. And that wasn't a step. That was a huge leap for me.
Yeah.
Because my faith has defined me of who I am. I mean, I've trashed my life several times over, and God continues to save me. I always say, hey, I don't want to be too religious because I love everybody. It doesn't matter where you're at or where you're from. I've been in all those places, and it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, so it was huge for me, but it just kind of grew. I was driving. I got a dog. After that, I went and got a little puppy. And her name was Lily. It's a little black lab
Mhm.
because I wanted somebody to hang out with the 7 days that my kids weren't with me. So I got a dog named her Lily. She's a little black lab.
Because of a billboard you saw.
I did. I was on the way to get her in Augusta, and I saw a Eli Lilly
Law
board.
firm.
No, it's medical. It's like a pharmaceutical
medical.
company.
Oh, yeah. I thought it
And I was like, Lily, yeah, that's a great name. That's how much thought
You
goes
even
into my life.
spelled it like the
It's exactly like it
weird
was on the
spelling.
billboard. Yes. No. So
I was like, this is not how regular people spell Lily, but you're like, I don't care. This is how I spell it.
well, Lily and I would she would ride to work with me every morning, and I would talk to her. And sometimes I was mad. Sometimes I was still trying to figure out life, single life, and figuring out when I had my kids. It was I didn't know what I was doing. I had Callie was this cute little girl. I didn't know how to do her hair. I didn't know how to put it in ponytails. I didn't know how to do anything. So all that was a learning curve for me. But one night on New Year's, I remember riding home. This is the next big step for me. I think
Mhm.
that's kind of like, okay, this is it. I was riding home on New Year's, and it was 12:05. We're sitting at Chestnut Mountain at the red light. And I remember talking to Lily and basically said, we're going to make some changes. Like, this isn't going to be our life. And she didn't talk back a whole lot, which is probably kind of good. So I remember we got home and we shared a beer and some microwave popcorn.
Her favorite.
Yes, she absolutely loved microwave
Mhm.
popcorn. And she did like beer. I know it's not good for a dog, but it was our life and we lived it. So I made 3 commitments. I was like, I'm going to surround myself with a bunch of men who are chasing after what is right, what is good. I'm gonna surround myself with them. I'm not going to neglect my kids. or my life for money. I will not make that decision. And then the third one, now that I certainly them all out, I can't remember what that third one was. Oh, I was going to say yes to opportunities that I had to just
Yeah.
to serve him. And so he's like, okay. And when I started making those decisions and following through with them,
And then,
yeah, it was right after that. It's like things started to turn, and then all of a sudden, I'm on a ropes course doing maintenance, and a friend of mine calls me, a high school friend, and says, "Hey, Greg, I got this girl you need to go out with." And I was like, "Bro, I'm not ready for that." I was like, "I am not going out with a girl right now." It's like I'm not. It's not where I'm at. And we went on. And I've known Eddie forever. He was my high school ride or die.
and Eddie and his wife were friends with my friend Kim, who had
Yes.
approached me about you.
Yes. And so through all of that, we kind of said,
We
I
both
said,
said
I'll have coffee.
we'll have coffee.
And so once we said I'd have coffee, we
But
agreed.
I said he's got to come down where I am, where my kids have karate, because there's a Waffle House attached to that shopping center, so I can just walk up.
So our first coffee was at a Waffle House. And if you're not from the South, it is the primo diner
It's
of the South.
5-star.
Coffee is, waffles are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we had our first.
We said
And-
yes to coffee.
Yes, that's what I told him. I was like, I'll say yes to coffee, and that's it.
Only.
And then I think that coffee lasted 3 hours.
Uh-huh.
And so wound up, we had dinner.
And thankfully, my friend Lisa, her daughter was also in the same karate class as Erin Grace. And so I texted Lisa. I was like, this coffee's going really good. Can you take the kids home with you? And she did, which gave me the freedom to
Yeah, we hung out.
keep
and then
talking.
From there, we're like, hey, let's go out again.
Mm-hmm.
And then so we went out to, big adventure stuff, loved adventure, rock climbing,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of anything outside, just loved. So I was like, we're going to go.
And I was really into mountain biking at that point and anything
Yes.
outside as well.
Yeah, so I was like, we're going to go climbing at Stone Summit, packed a little picnic basket, went rock climbing. I told her I just wanted to see her butt in a harness. That was the only reason I carried her. That and it's fun, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I hate if you want, but this is the truth. So then we went to dinner afterwards and had great conversation.
Oh, it was so great.
Stunning.
Yeah.
and just-
You proceeded to tell me that you didn't know if you could ever trust women again, and basically went on a rant of
I don't quite remember it that
women
way.
are liars. I don't know that I want an actual relationship. It was
Okay,
really,
so that
it
was the
really
first time-
encouraging to my heart.
So
It
that's the
was
first
really-
time I actually unpacked my bag and said, look at what I got.
I don't trust anybody.
Okay.
Is what was in your bag.
And then, I've been working through my issues, and it was still there. I mean, there was still a level of, for us to build. That's when I realized we had that was the first time when we're like, okay, we have some underlying issues here.
Yeah.
Because you would
Well,
text me.
it took me a little bit to figure that out, because when I got to my part where I figured out I had some issues, we had been talking for a few weeks.
Yeah, just kind of hanging out. We would not hang out with our kids. It was just the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
But if Jess would text, and if I did not respond,
Immediately.
yeah, and my job did not allow me to just respond on my phone immediately. I was leading zipline tours and doing zipline things, so was in the air working on things, leading tours. So I didn't have my phone.
But I needed you to respond immediately.
Yeah, and so I asked Jess. I was like, "What?
Why are you so upset?"
Yes, why? What's the issue? Why I don't text you? Like I don't have my phone in my hand. And I remember you saying, "I don't know if you're okay or not."
Yeah.
And that was the first time it hit me. I was like, "What do you mean?"
And that was where my trust came in. It wasn't like I didn't trust you. I just didn't trust that you were okay after what I had just come through. Like if you didn't answer the phone if I called, or if you didn't respond, like you said, like right away, I immediately went into a spiral of something's happened to him. He's hurt, or worse, not just hold on a minute and he'll respond when he can.
Yeah.
I wasn't capable of thinking that way yet.
Gotcha.
So then I went back to counseling
Well, we went to counseling together too. Like we were
Yes.
still going to counseling when we were dating.
separately.
Yeah, but then I had a friend of mine who was a counselor, invited us in.
But we didn't start that till we got engaged.
Oh, was that engaged? Okay.
We were engaged.
So story for another day. So here's the biggest thing that I would say for us, because we look and dissect our relationship all the time. And I think the one thing that helped us be so, I don't want to say so effective. I don't know if effective is the right word,
Intentional?
about our relationship or unpacking this stuff, is that we realized if you want to have a healthy relationship, you have to be a very healthy person.
Yeah.
Like, you got to own your crap, own my trust issues, own
Yeah.
my stuff of saying, I don't believe this or you believe that. Like, we had to really, and we still have to go back and forth sometimes with that of unpacking those together. So I guess, and even thinking of tonight and where we've come from and where we're at, what's one thing you would say, kind of advice to people who are listening, to say, hey, I'm struggling right now with this, or this is I feel stuck.
Well, I mean, you can attest to this, that when we got together, I was a crappy communicator.
Hey, you weren't great at it.
I was terrible at it. I was terrible at acknowledging my own feelings. I was terrible at even asking questions. I was just not a very good communicator at all. So to be able to effectively communicate what you're feeling in a way that's not intentionally trying to hurt one another, I think the effective part is the important part of say what you need to say and say what you're looking for so that you can meet in the middle.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
A little bit. I think so.
Just
Does a little bit of sense.
okay.
So it's just the idea, because when we say communicate is not me just telling you what think you need to hear. Communication's for me, a huge part of communication is me listening to what you have to say.
Right.
Like that for me, if I want to communicate well with you, I need to stop, shut my mouth, and listen to what you have to say.
Yeah. I
Would you agree
mean,
with
I
that?
think that's probably the key to our success. If you were to say, I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but the biggest piece of who we are is communicating.
Yeah, I'd agree. So we're gonna, like, in wrapping it up, we're gonna do something, because we've went on, and you guys are probably like, please.
Stop it.
Yeah, I'm through 4 drinks already. But we have this book we called, we absolutely have no connection to these people at all, other than we really like their book.
I found it on Amazon.
Yeah, and we really like it. And so we use it a lot. I don't have my reading glasses on. That tells you how old I am. I'm trying to read. I can't even read it now.
Which question are you? I'll see if I can, because I don't have my glasses either. I left them in the kitchen.
This is the real live version
Yep.
of us. Oh my God, I
Do
can't
it.
even read it.
Hand it to me. Which one are you doing?
This one right here.
Okay.
I think that's the one we're doing. Yeah, you can't read it either.
I don't think this is a question we talked about.
Okay, maybe it's not.
Can you share an emotional memory centered on your favorite childhood toy?
Yes.
Yes, that's what you picked out.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Let me read it one more time. Can you share an emotional memory centered around your favorite childhood toy? My favorite childhood toy?
Yeah. Like one you always just loved. You gotta have one.
You obviously do.
I grew up on a farm, kinda. So, I mean, yeah.
We're talking about a childhood toy, not
Yeah.
a job.
I didn't have a lot of toys to play. I say that with that in mind, not in a weird way. Yeah, tell me something.
I mean,
I'll tell you what my favorite one was.
I was just trying to get you to do that.
Okay, go ahead. Your turn.
No, you. I want you to say.
Okay, it's good and bad. I'll share the good and leave the bad out. How about that?
I don't even.
Is it a memory? What does it say?
Oh,
Your best
my
childhood?
Gosh, can you listen to me when I read it? Can you share an emotional memory centered on your favorite childhood toy?
Yes.
Ready, go.
I wanted to end on a happy note, but this was the first thing that popped in my mind.
Oh, no.
So I had this Atari game. This when Atari came out with the one joystick and the button.
Yeah.
asteroids.
Yeah.
Loved asteroids. It was amazing.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there and I'm playing asteroids, and I'm playing this asteroid game, and just we're all into it. I had lots of friends over there, like cousins, but God, I hate to share this.
This is supposed to be a good. I feel like a good.
So that was my favorite toy. I'm just gonna stop with that. That's it. The night didn't end well, but that was my favorite toy. I loved asteroids. I loved that. It was like 2 or 3 games. You didn't get a lot of games in
And
there.
Pong was the
Yeah, you
other
got
one.
Pong. It
where
was the
you-
one with the little battleship where you drove around and like shoot your tank would shoot at another tank
Yeah.
and different things. Yeah, it was that game. That's my favorite.
But then there's trauma
I'm
attached
just telling.
to that.
I'm
That's
telling
really
my
sad.
age. Yeah, it's really sad trauma at the end of that.
Well, like I had a blanket and a teddy bear I was very attached to until I was probably too big to sleep with those guys. But the most favorite toy I got excited about was there was a cartoon when I was little called Shirt Tails, and it was little animal guys, and they wore these little cute shirts. But I got a little go-karts, and they could like bumper cars together in their little situation. That was my favorite toy.
Oh, cool.
It was bumper cars
Oh,
with
I
all the
realize
little
bumper
guys.
cars.
And the panda was my favorite one.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. You can tell the difference in our stories. You got a little.
And our
cute golf
childhoods
cart
are really
and-
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My story ended with us hiding in the woods that night.
Oh,
So, with that being said, let's thank you guys. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.